Hello, this is Professor Graham, your laboratory instructor. This is our first lab for Biology 1406, the Safety Lab. These are your goals for the lab. The goals are what you need to know after completing all the exercises for the lab. This is also what you need to know to do well on the lab quizzes and lab projects. Lab is different from lecture. You'll be using laboratory techniques and learning about equipment that will help you understand the concepts presented in lecture. Your grades in lab will mainly be from lab quizzes and lab projects. You'll take the lab quizzes after completing the chapters for each lab. Post-lab questions at the end of the chapter will help you be able to prepare for the quiz. We have 4 units in lab, and the lab projects test you over each of those units. You'll need to know the procedures and the equipment that you used for each of the exercises to be able to answer the questions from the project. And this is the manual you'll need for lab. If you don't have this manual, please contact me immediately. The manual contains lab activities that present certain concepts that you'll need to know to be able to perform the exercises. Within the activity, you'll have exercises. Exercises that are marked with a pencil reinforce concepts that you learn in lecture and will explore further in lab. You'll apply your knowledge of those concepts in the exercises marked with a hand. You'll do this through watching a video, walking through a simulation, or conducting a virtual lab since we're doing this online. The first activity gives you the format for face-to-face classes. This is still valid for online classes, as you'll need to understand the concepts presented in lecture to be able to apply them in lab. And even though this is an online lab, you'll still need to go through the manual, write down the answers for exercises, and the questions that you'll be doing before you actually do the activities, and then after you complete the activities. For your first exercises, you'll need to think about what the consequences will be if you miss information from the lecture portion or the lab portion. This might include knowledge lost or points lost. The next activity goes over laboratory safety. Even though you're not in a physical lab, you still need to know about laboratory safety. A physical lab has safety data sheets on all the chemical used in that lab. This gives detailed information about each chemical so that information can be learned in case of allergies or if there's a spill, how to clean it up. You also may come in contact with a biohazard in a physical lab. A biohazard is something that is hazardous to human health, and that material needs to be disposed of in proper containers. It's not very convenient to have to look up the SDS for every chemical you use in lab, so each chemical is marked with pictograms, GHS pictograms, that allow you to quickly determine the hazards of a chemical. You will need to be able to recognize all 9 pictograms, so let's practice by doing an exercise. Here are your 3 unknowns for the exercise. By looking at each and looking at the GHS labels, you'll need to describe what those pictograms mean, as well as what precautions you should take while handling these chemicals. And finally, even though you aren't in a physical lab, you still need to know the rules of the lab so that everyone stays safe. For each lab, you should go over the chapter without doing the exercises. Try to answer the pre-lab questions. If you can answer those, that means you understand the concepts well enough to perform the exercises. After you perform the exercises, you should be able to answer the post-lab questions. By reviewing your answers in the exercises, you should be able to answer in detailed information. This will allow you to be able to do well on the lab quizzes and the lab projects. If you complete everything thoroughly, that means going through the exercises, providing answers, being able to answer all those post-lab questions in detail. This means you know the information and are prepared to take the lab quizzes and the lab projects.